You felt it, that quiet nagging suspicion that the hours you've spent studying haven't actually changed you. You bought the books. You downloaded the apps. You might have even finished the course. But when the moment comes to actually use the skill, to speak the language, to write the code, to play the song, you realize you've only acquired the memory of learning, not the skill itself. We live in an age of passive consumption disguised as growth. We watch tutorials instead of doing the work. We read summaries instead of wrestling with the text. We are, in the words of Scott Young in his seminal work, ultra-learning, dabbling. We are tourists in the land of knowledge, taking photos of the monuments but never actually living in the city. We have become experts at the feeling of being productive, while our actual capabilities remain stagnant. Ultra-learning isn't just a method, it's a philosophy of intensity. It's the realization that if you want to master a hard skill, the comfortable path, the one laid out by traditional schools and polished apps, is almost perfectly designed to fail you. It is a strategy for aggressive, self-directed learning. Today, we're going to dismantle that comfortable path and look at the 9 principles that turn a hobbyist into a master. This is about the architecture of your own mind. It is about the refusal to be mediocre in a world that profits off your distraction. METLERNING, the map. Most people start a project by jumping into the first resource they find. They buy the complete guide to X and start on page 1. Young argues this is like trying to navigate a forest without a map. You might walk for miles, but you're probably walking in circles. You are putting in effort, but you aren't making progress. This is the illusion of action. Meta-learning is learning about learning. It is the metacognitive layer that sits above the study itself. Before you touch the material, you spend a significant portion of your total time, roughly 10%, researching how to learn it. This isn't procrastination, it's reconnaissance. You are looking for the structural logic of the skill. Think of it as the pre-production phase of a film. Without a script and a storyboard, the filming is just chaos. You must ask 3 fundamental questions: why, what, and how. The why is your North Star. Are you learning this for a career change? If so, your path is instrumental. You need to focus on what the market demands. Are you learning for the sheer joy of it? Then your path is intrinsic. You follow your curiosity. Most people fail because they use an instrumental method for an intrinsic goal or vice versa. They get bored because they are studying for a test that doesn't exist, or they fail because they are playing while the professionals are training. If you don't know the why, the how will eventually become a burden you can no longer carry. The what involves mapping out the 3 pillars: concepts, facts, and procedures. Concepts are the things that need to be understood, the mental models. You cannot memorize how a market economy works. You must understand the concept of supply and demand. Facts are the things that need to be memorized, the vocabulary of a field. In anatomy, you cannot understand the name of a bone. You must simply know the fact. Procedures are the things that need to be practiced, the muscle memory. If you try to memorize a concept, you'll be rigid and unable to apply it to new situations. If you try to understand a fact, you're wasting cognitive energy. The how is the search for the benchmarks. How did the greats do it? If you want to learn to paint, don't just look at paintings. Look at how the masters trained in their studios. Did they copy other masters? Did they study perspective first? The philosophy here is simple: precision beats effort. If you spend 5 hours mapping the territory, you'll save 50 hours of wandering. You are building a syllabus for yourself that is better than any university could provide, because it is tailored specifically to the gaps in your own soul. The knife. In a world designed to fragment your attention, focus is your only weapon. It is the knife that carves meaning out of the chaos. Jung identifies 3 enemies of this knife: procrastination, distraction, and flow-seeking. Procrastination is the most obvious, but its roots are psychological, not moral. We don't procrastinate because we are lazy. We procrastinate because the task feels threatening. It is a defense mechanism against the pain of potentially failing or feeling incompetent. The ultra-learner recognizes that the mood to learn is a myth. You don't need to feel inspired. You just need to survive the first 5 minutes of cognitive friction. This is the startup cost of deep work. Once the engine is warm, the resistance fades. We must learn to treat our resistance as a compass. The more we don't want to do something, the more likely it is the exact thing we need to do. Distraction is the external enemy. In the 21st century, every app on your phone is a highly engineered lure designed to steal your focus for profit. To be an ultra-learner is to be a digital ascetic. It is to create an environment where focus is the default, not the exception. It means leaving the phone in another room, turning off the Wi-Fi, and admitting that your willpower is not stronger than a billion-dollar algorithm. But the most dangerous enemy is flow seeking. We've been told that flow is the peak state of learning, that effortless, timeless zone. But Jung argues that true learning is often the opposite of flow. Learning is uncomfortable. It is taxing. If you are in flow, you are likely doing something you are already good at. You are coasting. To learn, you must be on the edge of your ability, where it feels frustrating and clumsy. The philosophy of the knife means sharpening your concentration until it can cut through the noise of the modern world. You must learn to sit in the boredom until the boredom turns into insight. You must treat your attention as your most valuable currency, because it is the only thing you truly own. In the age of AI and automation, the ability to focus deeply on a complex task is the only unhackable skill left. Directness, the straight line. This is where most traditional education fails. It is the great tragedy of the modern student. We learn a language on an app for a year, hitting our daily goals and collecting streaks. But when we land in a foreign country, we can't order coffee. We have learned the app, not the language. We have learned how to pass a test about history, but we don't know how to think like a historian. Jung calls this the transfer problem. Knowledge is surprisingly fragile. It doesn't like to move from one context to another. If you learn something in a classroom, your brain thinks that knowledge belongs only in a classroom. This is why people who are book smart often struggle in the real world. Their knowledge is context-bound. The solution is the philosophy of directness. Learn by doing the thing itself. This is the straight line. If you want to be a programmer, your primary activity should be writing code, not watching 40 hours of intro to Python videos. If you want to be a public speaker, you need to find a stage, not a book on rhetoric. One of the most famous examples of this is Jung's own MIT challenge, where he attempted to learn the entire 4-year MIT computer science curriculum in 1 year without taking a single class. He didn't sit in lectures. He did the final exams and the actual programming assignments. He went straight to the source of the difficulty. Directness is terrifying because it forces you to face your incompetence immediately. There is no preparatory buffer. There is no safety net of theory. But this discomfort is exactly why it works. It forces the brain to adapt to the real-world environment where the skill will eventually live. Directness is a refusal to hide behind busy work. It is the willingness to be bad at the actual task until you are good at it. It is the realization that the shortest path to mastery is usually the one you are most afraid to take. The scalpel. Once you start practicing directly, you will inevitably hit a wall. You'll find that your progress plateaus. This is usually because there is one specific part of the skill, one tiny subcomponent, that is holding you back. This is the rate-determining step. In chemistry, a reaction can only go as fast as its slowest part. Your learning is the same. If you are a guitar player and you can't switch between the C and G chords quickly, it doesn't matter how fast your other fingers move. Your music will always stutter at that transition. If you are learning a language and you have perfect grammar but a tiny vocabulary, your conversations will always fail. Instead of practicing the whole song over and over, which is what most people do, you must use the scalpel. You isolate that bottleneck. You cut it out of the larger skill and you drill it in isolation until the weakness becomes a strength. There is a specific rhythm to this. Direct practice to drill to direct practice. You try the whole task, direct practice. You identify where you are stumbling. You isolate that stumble and practice it until it's smooth drill, and then you reintegrate it back into the whole task. The philosophy of the drill is a battle against ego. It's boring to work on your weaknesses. It's fun to do the parts you're already good at. We like to perform, we hate to train. But progress lives in the parts you're currently avoiding. The ultra learner looks for the friction. They find the part of the process that makes them feel stupid, and they stay there until it becomes second nature. They don't want to look good, they want to be good. The echo. Most people study by reviewing, rereading notes, highlighting text, or looking at diagrams. This feels productive because it creates fluency. Because the material is right in front of you, it looks familiar. Your brain recognizes the shape of the words and whispers, "Yeah, I know that." But familiarity is not the same as knowledge. Familiarity is passive. Knowledge is active. Fluency is a trick the mind plays to save energy. The brain doesn't learn when it takes in information. It learns when it pulls it out. This is retrieval. If you read a chapter and then immediately try to write down everything you remember from memory, you are retrieving. It will be hard. You will feel like you've forgotten 80% of it. You will feel stupid. But that feeling of struggle is the sound of the brain changing. Retrieval is the echo of knowledge. If you can't hear the echo, the knowledge isn't there. Every time you struggle to remember something, you are strengthening the neural pathway to that information. Think of it like a path in a forest. Rereading is like looking at a picture of the path. Retrieval is actually walking the path. The more you walk it, the deeper the grooves become, and the easier it is to find the next time. The philosophy of retrieval is about embracing desirable difficulty. If the learning feels easy, it's probably useless. If it feels like your brain is straining to find a lost key in a dark room, you are actually learning. Stop looking at your notes. Close the book. Ask yourself, what was the core argument? Force the echo. Use flashcards, use practice tests, or simply use a blank sheet of paper. The mirror. Feedback is the breakfast of masters, but most of us are on a diet of delusion. We avoid feedback because it hurts our feelings. We prefer outcome feedback, the final grade or the likes on a post, over corrective feedback, which tells us exactly where we went wrong. In Ultra Learning, Scott Young emphasizes that you must punch through the fear of being wrong. You need high-intensity, rapid feedback. You need to fail in public. There are 3 types of feedback you must navigate. 1. Outcome feedback. This tells you if you succeeded or failed. It's a yes-no signal, useful but limited. 2. Informational feedback. This tells you what went wrong. It points to the mistake but doesn't necessarily tell you how to fix it. 3. Corrective feedback. This is the gold standard. It tells you what went wrong and how to adjust your technique. This usually requires a coach, a mentor, or a very high-quality automated system. Think of feedback as a mirror. If you don't look in the mirror because you're afraid you look messy, you'll never get clean. The ultra learner seeks out the harshest, most accurate mirror possible. They don't want to be told they're doing great. They want to be told why they're failing. They view mistakes not as moral failures but as data points. To learn fast, you must fail fast. You must shorten the loop between action and feedback. If you only get feedback once a month, you can only improve 12 times a year. If you get feedback every 10 minutes, your growth becomes exponential. You must be willing to look like a fool in the short term to become a master in the long term. The leaky bucket. We are all walking around with leaky buckets. We spend weeks learning something, and then, 6 months later, it has vanished into the fog of time. This is the forgetting curve, discovered by Hermann Ebbinghaus. We lose the majority of what we learn within the first 24 hours unless we intervene. Young identifies 3 reasons our buckets leak: decay, interference, and lack of cues. Decay is the simple passage of time. Like an old trail becoming overgrown with weeds, if you don't walk the path, it disappears. Interference is when new memories overwrite old ones. Learning a second programming language can sometimes make you forget the syntax of the first. Lack of cues is when you have the information, but you don't have the hook to pull it out. It's the "it's on the tip of my tongue" phenomenon. The philosophy of retention isn't about working harder. It's about working smarter with the biology of memory. You use spacing, spreading your practice out over days instead of hours. 10 hours of study spread over 2 weeks is infinitely more effective than a 10-hour cram session. Cramming is like trying to paint a house with one giant bucket of paint in a single minute. Most of it just runs off the walls. Spacing is like applying thin coats and letting them dry in between. You also use proceduralization, turning facts into habits. Once a skill moves from your conscious mind to your procedural memory, the basal ganglia, it becomes almost impossible to forget. You don't forget how to ride a bike because it has become a procedure, not a set of facts. If you want to keep the water in the bucket, you have to stop the leaks before you keep pouring more in. Mastery is not about how much you've seen. It's about what remains when you're tired and the books are closed. It's about building a foundation that time cannot erode. The deep ROTS. Intuition isn't magic. It isn't a gut feeling that comes from nowhere. It is the result of deep foundational understanding. It is chunking, the ability of the brain to see complex patterns as a single, simple unit. A grandmaster at chess doesn't see 32 separate pieces. They see an attacking formation. Jung suggests the Feynman technique to build this. Try to explain a complex concept to a 10-year-old. If you can't, you don't understand it. You've just memorized the jargon. Jargon is a mask we wear to hide our lack of understanding from ourselves and others. When you strip away the big words, do you actually know what is happening? The philosophy of intuition is a commitment to the why behind the how. Don't just learn the formula, learn why the formula exists. Understand the underlying logic of the system. If you understand the physics of why a car turns, you can drive on ice, on rain, or on a racetrack. If you only know how to drive, you'll crash the moment the conditions change. When you understand the roots, you can grow any branch you want. You can solve problems you've never seen before because you understand the first principles of the field. Intuition is the reward for the hard work of the previous 8 steps. It is the moment when you stop thinking about the skill and start living it. It is the difference between a student and a sage. The horizon. Finally, once you've mastered the rules, you must break them. All of these principles are just a starting point. They are the scaffolding. True mastery happens when you move beyond the map and start exploring the territory for yourself. As you become an expert, the advice of others becomes less useful. In the beginning, everyone can help you. In the middle, only teachers can help you. At the end, you are alone. You eventually reach a point where there are no more teachers who can show you the way. You must become your own scientist. Experimentation is where you find your superpower. It's where you combine unrelated skills, like coding and art or philosophy and business, to create something entirely new. This is the edge of the map. Think of Van Gogh. He learned the traditional rules of painting, but he only became Van Gogh when he began to experiment with color and texture in a way that defied the rules of his time. He moved from learning to experimentation. The philosophy of experimentation is the realization that learning never truly ends. It just changes shape. It moves from acquisition to innovation. This is the horizon of ultra-learning. It's the point where you stop being a student and start being a creator. It is the moment you stop following Scott Jung's book and start writing your own life. The choice. Scott Jung's ultra-learning isn't a promise of easy success. It isn't a life hack or a shortcut. In fact, it is the longest, hardest path you could possibly take. It's a warning that the price of mastery is higher than most people are willing to pay. The modern world wants you to be a passive consumer. It wants you to stay in the dabbling phase because dabblers keep buying new apps and new courses. The ultra learner is a threat to that system because the ultra learner is self-sufficient. This path requires you to sit with discomfort. It requires you to seek out failure. It requires you to dismantle your own ego and look at your own ignorance with unblinking eyes. You must be willing to trade your comfort for your potential. But on the other side of that price is a version of yourself that is fundamentally different. A version of yourself that can learn anything. A version of yourself that isn't afraid of a changing world because you know how to adapt to it. You realize that talent is largely a myth we tell ourselves to feel better about our own lack of effort. Talent is just the starting line. Ultra learning is the race. Mastery is a choice. It is a series of choices made every single day in the quiet of your own room, away from the applause and the validation of social media. It is the choice to pick up the scalpel, to look in the mirror, and to walk the straight line. The question isn't whether you can learn this way. The question is whether you will choose the comfort of the dabbler, the safety of the app and the tutorial, or the intensity of the ultra learner. The map is in your hands. The principles are laid out. The only thing left is the work. Now you just have to start walking. Stay safe and see you in the next video.